So I'm here at Royale at the Daisy Farm. Hiked out here with my partner Devora. We hiked up to Mount Ojibwe. Got to see the entirety of the island. It's 99% wilderness, which means that 99% of the island, nature rules. There is no or very little human intervention in terms of making trails or making shelters. Humans do study the ecosystem and try to, maintain it in a way. Isle Royale is actually one of the sites, probably, in my opinion, one of the most interesting ecological studies. There's populations of wolves. Oh my gosh, whoa. Oh, some ducks just all ran out into the water. There are wolves, there are moose, and there are beavers. And the wolf population was kind of going out, but declined to almost zero. And during that time, where the wolf population was low, the forest growths in some areas and the vegetation just started receding. The trees just weren't repopulating and spreading. And there were a lot of different questions as to why that was happening. Turns out, when they reintroduced wolves to here, so this is kind of where I would say humans are interfering, but it's really attempting to restore the natural order of the island, that the wolves needed to keep the smaller critters and the moose away from the saplings. So when these small critters and the moose and other animals, I'm not an ecologist or a natural scientist, so I could be getting some of these things wrong. They were able to just have free roam. They weren't scared of anything. They didn't have to stay in any specific territory. So they would just go and eat from the forest edge and out in these large fields, and they were eating all the saplings and the seeds of these trees. So then once the wolves were reintroduced, they were able to, kind of keep all those critters and animals in check. And the forest started repopulating. And it's a really amazing study in how nature is such a system. You need every little piece of it, and if one piece falls away, it can really affect the whole ecosystem. Who would think that wolves create tree growth? It's a pretty crazy connection there, but it seems that's the case. And last night, actually right behind these trees, I had the privilege of getting to meet two of the people who actually have been working on that study, part of the Wolf and Moose Isle Royale Society, or whatever the organization is called. Started back in the 50s, I believe. They started out of Purdue, I believe, and it was just incredible to know and to meet these two people who they spend about 7 months of their lives every year on this island, counting moose, collecting bones of the moose, counting wolves, counting beavers, really dedicating their lives to the preservation of this ecosystem. And I believe her name was Carol, the woman who was leading the talk. We got to see moose bones, and she talked about how when the moose aren't hunted, actually what you get, you think, oh, hunting moose, it's so bad. These moose are just getting eaten, when there was no predation of the moose. Many who were sick and injured, had bad bones, had osteoporosis, and they got that way because there was not enough food for all the moose that were really overpopulating the island. She showed us the skulls and the hip joints, where you could see that they had these, terrible, just like cavities in the bones. the one skull they had, actually, the one side, the antler was, full on, kind of the wide, kind of how a moose antler has the wide body part here, and then the antlers that come off of it. The ranger's leaving the island, so I don't know if you can hear the boat taking off. The other side, it was thin, like almost like a deer antler, and they're saying that's because the one side of the body had terrible osteoporosis and arthritis, and really what that's from is while the mother is carrying the calves, they don't have enough food and sustenance to make a healthy moose calf. So wolves are able to thin out the herd from the ones that are sick. It's bad for that moose, but theoretically it's living a pretty rough life, because if they have bad joints, they can't walk well, they trip and fall and break things themselves, their bodies. So these wolves, being their predators, they're very important to the health of the moose, actually, and the health of the whole island. I think what surprised me too was how much she used kind of that story as a metaphor for humanity, and how we often don't know what it takes to kind of restore balance in the system. She wasn't saying this exactly, but this was what I took away from it, was often we think of these predators as really bad things, and we let them take control sometimes. If you think about in our economy, it's really can be comparative to an ecosystem. Our economy is our resources. How we, sometimes it's based off natural resources. It comes from that. But if we just let's say if the wolves really got out of hand, maybe you can think about what our economy and what America is like, and are the wolves out of hand on some senses, eating up all the resources for everybody, depleting them away from balance, hoarding them. Well, how do you fix that? Well, wolves are not only predators of prey, they can be predators of each other, keep each other in check, and maybe we've lost that other side of the predation, that the only wolves out there are the ones who are exploiting all the resources, and there's no wolves there to stop them from getting out of their territory, stop them from overfeeding and hoarding the scarce supplies that we have. She was talking to, and the ranger's returning now, so again, you might hear some boat noises in the background. She was talking about how humans have this amazing capacity to wonder and study. The way she put it was very interesting. She said, we're the only animals on this island right now talking about other animals. We're the only animals wondering about other animals and looking at their bones and studying them and thinking about them and spending our time and awareness on them. The wolves and the moose aren't gathering together and looking at human bones and thinking about them. To think about everything, to imagine everything as a whole, is pretty countercultural. It's not really what American values and consumerist capitalist values want you to think about. They don't want you to think about how we are all one thing. They more want you to think about just the one, the you, me. And your tribe, maybe, or your race of people, your culture, your identity, how it's you, when really it's all are one. And she said something that really struck me, where she was talking about what to value in society, and in the world, and how so many people value family values, and how it's such an easy thing to say, like, oh, I'm for family values. Well, family values are just that. They're for your family, for your group of people. Ranger's really coming and going this morning. But that those family values often breed this kind of, you know, this is what we do, not what other people do. She said too about how, children have this innate desire to wonder, and when they see, a snake in the garden, is their first response to say, ooh, and ah, and look at that snake and wonder. It's not till they see, the mom come around and go, ooh, a snake, eek, get it out of here, that they learn that, those things are not good. And obviously there's some, instinctual fear of snakes and spiders that might come with humanity. It's because they were kind of some predators of us for a while. But really the human quality, or maybe something that sets us apart from all other animals on this planet, are our ability to wonder and marvel at the things around us and want to understand them. And in reflecting on that, it made me think a lot about meditation, and how in meditation people spend so much time trying to seek this place or this feeling, when really it's right there in front of you the whole time. It's more unlearning and letting go of all these things that we have to function in society, to communicate with each other, emotional patterns and traumatic responses that we have. It's getting past all of those and returning to the base experience of that. Maybe reflect on one of the poems from the Tao Te Ching, which I wrote an interpretation of, which I called The Mellow Way. If you're interested in reading more about it, you can check the description for where you can pick up your ebook copy of it. But it made me focus on a couple verses in particular, and one of them was poem 18. When named ways are held up as the nameless, there may be great unity and prosperity and learning, but because it is not the nameless way, there is great deception. There is chaos in the family, so patriarchy begins. The truth becomes uncomfortable, so comfortable untruth begins. There is chaos in the country, so patriots are born. Now, what does that have to do with our Royale and nature and ecosystems? Well, it's about balance. It's about how it's very easy to become deceived, and how those all take time and effort to uphold. And I didn't use that word patriarchy as just a modern buzzword. The original text, it's filial piety, which is a traditional family orientation where the fathers of the family and the men of the family are really the leaders. Whatever they say goes, and there's kind of a code of honor amongst them, and if that's how kind of things are kept in line, is through the father. And I believe the term for that we use today is patriarchy, where fathers, particularly old men, set the ways for younger people and women and those who have varying gender identities. Why is that? And many people might say, well, it's the natural order. Look back at the wolves. There's the whole pecking order in the wolves. While the alpha beta thing has been really debunked as garbage science, there is a definite pecking order. Um, that's what she was talking about. It's very obvious that the best hunters of the group get the first share of the food. Um, then kind of the lesser hunters, the older women, the female wolves of the group, and then finally the pups, the youngest, are the last ones to feed. And if there isn't enough food to go around, well, it's the youngest and the least advantageous hunters who don't get it. And so some may say that that means that the best hunters should determine the way of the society in total. But if the pups die off, let's say if every meal the wolves ate beyond what they needed, there wouldn't be any wolves anymore. The pups don't get enough food. There's no opportunity for those pups to become the leaders and the great hunters. And she was saying that people think the pack is a social structure of the wolves or used for hunting, but she was saying they really think, I don't know if this is a real study or just their personal opinions on studying the wolves, that it's really about that distribution of resources. That if a lone wolf were to take down a moose, obviously it helps to have more wolves to help you grab on and tear through the legs to stop the moose and bring it down. But a single wolf could probably do it itself. What the pack mentality comes from is that one wolf can only eat so much. And if that moose is left out, it's going to spoil, or it's going to get picked away by other birds and animals that shouldn't be relying on the wolves to kill for them. They should be harvesting other things, other foods, smaller prey, eating from the habitat if they're omnivores. That if this wolf was to hoard all the resources to itself, they would go to spoil, or they would cause more issues. And I think we are seeing a lot of that chaos in our society, where there are just a very few advantageous hunters who are killing many moose for themselves. They're not sharing it with the rest of the pack. And so this chaos begins, where there has to be deception, because it's obvious. The answer is let other wolves eat the moose. Share the resources that are there. But there has to be, a holding up of this deception. So we default to that leadership of the hunters and the most predacious among us. We default to sharing these comfortable untruths, as I called it, there, where I think family values is one of those, because really, family values can be anything. It's just what your family deems important. There is a kind of mythos around it, meaning Judeo-Christian values potentially in this country, being against same-sex marriage because you believe a family is a man and a woman having kids, a traditional life of buying a home in a community. All these things are comfortable because they're easy. They give an easy answer to a complicated story and a complicated life. And because people become so dependent on this false leadership, and then they become so comfortable with these false statements, there comes a lot of chaos in the country. And in chaos becomes a great opportunity for people to say, that they are the patriots and they're the ones who need to save us. Another one of my the poems in the mellow way has a line that I think often on is, "The world can't be saved, it can only be ruined." It's something I often reflect on when, there's this concern of making our country great again. What is a great country? Great. What were the problems that we were facing that makes it ungreat? There's a bug crawling over the lens right now, kind of creepy. But that's the nature of the bugs, to crawl on things, especially when they're warm, which I'm sure my camera is very warm right now. Our American ecosystem is pretty unbalanced right now, and I don't know what the answer is to find that balance. I don't know, kind of like I said, can it be saved? No. It can only be ruined. Just being out here in nature is a really great opportunity to reflect on how different it is in the world of the everyday life, and how different it must be for naturalists like them who live their everyday life out here in nature and commit to making those changes. So I don't have any kind of grander message except to see if you can notice where those imbalances come from. To see if you can notice where there is that chaos in the family structure that leads to this patriarchy, where there is that chaos that leads to these comfortable untruths, because the truth becomes so uncomfortable, because it becomes so hard to look reality in the face that people have to make up lies and myths about what needs to be done, or how the way things are, or who is responsible for causing all these problems. Is it really the poorest among us who are coming to our country to partake in its share of work and wealth who are causing problems? Or is it maybe those people who are hoarding the natural resources that we have access to, that are hoarding all the money, the resource of our economy? Who has a bigger impact? Who has more weight? Is it millions of people who have very little? Or is it a few people who have millions and billions, who have amassed power? Think about what's really shifting the scales there. Is it true, or is it a comfortable untruth? And really reflect on who claims that they're patriots and why they want to be patriots. Why does one want to become a hero of their country and their cause? And finally, what is saving the world or the country mean, and can it be saved? Does it need saving, or can it only be ruined and spoiled, like nature? Kind of when we move in and build our stuff up, are we really saving nature, or are we just kind of ruining it and making it our own thing? Check the link down below, the description, for some links to some things. I'll link not only some of my own work, but also the work of these amazing naturalists and scientists who live just across the bay over there for 7 months of their year. They canoed over, they canoe around the whole island. Really a different kind of life. But thanks for taking the time to listen to me, if you're listening. I appreciate it.